I still remember the exact moment I realized something in my own house had shifted, like a picture frame that's just slightly crooked, but you can't explain why it bothers you so much. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, and I was standing in my kitchen, staring at an empty coffee pot I knew I hadn't left empty. It was such a small thing, but it hit me with a weight I couldn't shake. Life has a way of warning you in whispers before it starts shouting. Most days, my routine is simple. I work early shifts at a small grocery store, stocking shelves before the place opens. It's not glamorous, but it's peaceful. I come home by mid-afternoon, try to keep the house in order, cook dinner, and give myself enough time in the evenings to breathe. My cousin Jake moved in with me last year after losing his place. He promised it'd be temporary, promised he'd get back on his feet, promised he wouldn't be a burden. And I believed him, because family is supposed to mean something. At first, things were fine. He helped with small chores, tossed some cash toward the bills when he could, and kept mostly to himself. But over the months, little things began piling up in ways I didn't want to admit at first. Dishes left in the sink right after I cleaned the kitchen. Groceries disappearing faster than I could buy them. Tools borrowed from the garage that never found their way back. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe just differences in habits. I told myself not to make a big deal out of it, but the disrespect crept in like mold around a window frame. He'd invite people over late at night without warning. He'd shrug when I asked about money for the electric bill he promised to cover. He started acting like the house was his to manage, telling delivery guys to just leave it inside, rearranging things in my living room, even giving my Wi-Fi password to random friends like it was community property. Every time I confronted him, he'd play innocent, act confused, or swear he didn't realize it mattered. Still, none of that prepared me for the moment I found out the betrayal went deeper than inconsiderate behavior. One evening, I stopped by the diner a few blocks from my house because I didn't feel like cooking. When I walked in, the waitress, someone I've known casually for years, gave me this awkward half smile and said, "Your cousin was here earlier, said you'd be stopping by too." I didn't think anything of it until she added, "You two working things out with the landlord?" My stomach dropped so fast it felt like missing a step in the dark. Landlord? Working things out? I hadn't talked to my landlord in weeks. I paid rent on time. Everything was normal. At least I thought it was. When I came home that night, I found Jake sitting on the couch, watching TV, like nothing in the world bothered him. And that's when something clicked. That crooked picture frame feeling snapped into a clear, sharp line of suspicion. The subtle disrespect was one thing, but this was something different. Something intentional. Something that smelled like betrayal I hadn't uncovered yet. As I watched him laugh at the TV, completely unaware of the questions now burning in my mind, I felt the first spark of something I hadn't felt in years. A quiet, grounded determination. Something was going on behind my back, and I was finally ready to find out exactly what. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to, God knows I did, but something told me to wait. People slip when they think no one's paying attention, and Jake had gotten way too comfortable pretending I was clueless. So instead, I started watching the small details, the ones I'd brushed off before. 2 days after the diner comment, I checked my mailbox and found a thin envelope from my landlord. I opened it standing right there on the porch, and the world seemed to tilt. Inside was a notice thanking me for discussing potential sublease transitions and requesting confirmation of the cousin's agreement to take over the property by summer. My cousin, taking over my house, behind my back. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they mixed up paperwork. But the notice included Jake's full name, phone number, and even a brief summary of his contribution toward household expenses. My jaw clenched. His contribution? He hadn't paid me a dime in 6 weeks. I went inside quietly, hoping I'd catch him off guard. He wasn't home. His jacket was gone, his boots too, and there were muddy footprints leading out the back door. The nerve of this guy, trying to push me out of my own home while eating my groceries and leaving his mess all over my living room. I sat at the kitchen table and let the truth sink in like cold water spreading across a floor. He'd gone to the landlord, pretending he was the one holding the place together financially. He'd acted like I was the weak link, the unreliable one. He'd spun a story where he was the responsible adult, and I was barely keeping things afloat. And the worst part? The landlord believed him. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, sneaky, like finding termites in the walls after months of ignoring a soft tapping sound. Jake had been working on this for a while, maybe dropping hints about me being stressed, or struggling, or wanting to move soon, maybe pretending he was the one paying for things, maybe promising my landlord things he had no right promising. That night, when he finally walked in, smelling like cheap beer and pretending everything was normal, I just watched him kick his muddy boots off onto the mat I'd asked him 10 times to keep clean. Watched him pull leftover chicken from the fridge without asking. Watched him eat it standing over the sink like he owned the place. He didn't even look in my direction. Something inside me settled. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. Pure, steady clarity. I finally asked, "You talked to the landlord recently?" He froze for a fraction of a second, but he recovered fast. Huh? Oh, yeah. Just, checking in. Checking in. The lies slid out of him so easily it almost impressed me. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept the answer. But inside, a final switch flipped. This wasn't bad habits or laziness. This was betrayal, planned, intentional, and aimed directly at the roof over my head. The moment he walked past me toward his room, not even bothering to close the fridge door behind him, I realized something. I was done tolerating it. If he wanted a battle for the house, fine. I'd give him one. But I wouldn't shout, or threaten, or kick him out in some dramatic scene. I'd let him trap himself with his own lies. And this time, I'd be the one paying attention. The first step was simple. I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt. Every bill, every receipt, every message from the landlord, I saved it. I kept a small notebook in my bedroom drawer, jotting down dates and details. Not because I wanted to turn into some detective, but because I needed clarity. Facts don't lie, even when people do. I also started checking in with the landlord directly, but casually, in a way that didn't raise suspicion. I'd mention repairs, ask about noise regulations, anything that allowed me to steer the conversation. Each time, I'd slip in a question like, "Hey, has my cousin been giving you updated info?" Just to see what surfaced. Every answer built a clearer picture. Apparently, Jake had told the landlord I was planning to move in with a coworker sometime soon, which was news to me. He'd said he'd been paying more than half the rent because of my unpredictable hours, another lie so bold it almost made me laugh. He'd even hinted that he might want to take over responsibilities on the property permanently. He really thought he could push me out of my own home by acting like he was already running it. But here's the thing about quiet revenge. It works best when the person has no idea you're preparing it. I stayed friendly. I didn't pick fights. I didn't question him when he came home late or slept half the day. I didn't react when he used the last of my laundry detergent or borrowed my car without asking. I let him think I was still the same pushover he'd been taking advantage of for months. Meanwhile, the notebook filled up. One night, I overheard him on the phone in the hallway. He didn't bother keeping his voice down. "Yeah, man, by June I'll have the place. She's basically checked out already. No, she won't fight it. Trust me." Checked out. Not fighting. Trust him. It was almost comical how confidently wrong he was. That was the night I finalized my plan. I called the landlord the next morning. Calm, polite, almost cheerful. I told her I wanted to stop by in person to review some paperwork. When I arrived, I brought everything. Bank statements showing I'd paid rent on time every month, screenshots of every transfer I'd made, copies of messages where I asked Jake for his share, even photos of him hosting guests at 2 a.m. on weekdays. But I didn't smear him or get emotional. I kept everything factual, straightforward. By the time I finished, the landlord looked stunned. She apologized, genuinely, and said she'd had no idea. She thought Jake was helping me during a tough time. I explained gently that I didn't know where he got that story. Then came the key moment. She pulled out the sublease transition document he had tried to push forward and handed it to me. Blank, unsigned, but very real. "He said you asked him to take over," she admitted, but nothing felt quite right. I felt my stomach tighten, not with anger anymore, but with satisfaction. This was exactly the proof I needed. I asked her for one thing: a written notice stating clearly that the lease was solely mine, that no sublease approval had been granted, and that any attempt to modify the agreement without my consent was invalid. She agreed immediately. And then I added, "Also, if you wouldn't mind contacting him directly with the update, that might clear things up faster." She smiled like she understood exactly what I was doing. That night, I waited. Jake walked in around 11, humming like he'd had a great day. Then he looked at his phone. I watched the color drain from his face. He read the landlord's message once, twice, 3 times. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. I stayed perfectly calm. "Looks like the truth finally caught up," I said. He stood there speechless, clutching the phone like it might bite him. For the first time since he moved in, he realized I wasn't the one who'd been played. He was. The silence that followed was almost peaceful. Jake stood there in the doorway, blinking at his phone like he could somehow will the message into saying something different. But facts don't bend just because someone wants them to. And now the landlord knew the truth. More importantly, he knew that she knew. He tried recovering with attitude. "So what? You went behind my back." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even stand up. "You tried taking my house," I said quietly. "I just corrected the record." He didn't have a good comeback for that. He muttered something under his breath, stomped to his room, and slammed the door. But the bravado was gone. I'd watched that confidence drain out of him like water through a cracked bucket. The consequences didn't hit immediately. They never do. But over the next few days, the fallout grew like a bruise spreading under the skin. First, the landlord told him directly that he was not authorized to make decisions about the property. She made it clear that any attempts to do so in the future would violate the lease and could result in him being removed. She even scheduled an inspection after noticing inconsistent behavior from him. That alone rattled him. Then the financial piece landed. Since he had falsely claimed to be paying most of the rent, she asked for a retroactive accounting of his actual contributions. I handed over my receipts. Jake had nothing, not even a text confirming payment. He'd been freeloading too long and too openly. She gave him a choice: either start paying a fair share with documented proof, or move out within 30 days. He sulked around the house for a week, avoiding eye contact, barely speaking, acting like I'd committed some huge betrayal. The irony was almost too rich. He kept calling friends, trying to convince someone to let him crash with them, but apparently I wasn't the only one he'd borrowed money from or taken advantage of. His options dried up fast. Meanwhile, the house felt lighter, cleaner, quieter. I realized how much space he'd taken up, physically and mentally. I cooked meals without hearing him complain. I slept without late-night visitors stumbling through the hallway. I didn't have to hide my wallet or worry about groceries evaporating. A strange calm settled in my life. On the morning he finally left, he didn't slam the door. He didn't argue. He just packed his things into the back of some friend's old sedan and mumbled, "You didn't have to make it a big deal." I looked him right in the eye. "You did that all by yourself." He looked away, then climbed in and drove off. No apology, no ownership, just quiet bitterness. But honestly, that was fine. Closure doesn't always come with a neat bow. Sometimes it's just the moment the chaos finally ends. After he left, I walked through the house, turning off lights, picking up a stray sock he'd dropped, noticing the dent he'd left in the couch cushion. It wasn't sadness I felt. It was relief. Clean, steady relief. For months, I'd been telling myself to give him time, give him grace, give him space. But betrayal has a way of showing you exactly who someone is when they think you're not paying attention. And I'd finally stopped ignoring the signs. The moral, at least for me, is simple. When someone quietly chips away at your stability, your kindness, or your trust, you don't have to match their chaos with chaos. Sometimes the smartest revenge is just shining enough light for everyone, including them, to see what they've been doing all along. And when the truth shows up, you let it do the heavy lifting.